So last time we talked about the elements and the very basic pattern of them and how they kind of pertain to our personal life.
Sure.
So there's the macrocosm, which are the elements or the forces outside of our personal lives, and then there's a microcosm, which we are. And it's said that the microcosm reflects the macrocosm, and the macrocosm reflects the microcosm, and so there's this play back and forth. So what I have up here, I kind of did the heavy lifting for us this time, since just to save time to kind of get to what the Hierophant's all about. We have the microcosm on the right, which is what we talked about the first time, which is personal will for fire. Water is emotion. Air is intellect. And then earth kind of had to do with like organization, money, material things, right? So why don't we move on to the macrocosm? Now that we can kind of identify with these things within us, let's look at these things on a broader scale. So fire represents the eternal and the infinite will. So let's take a step back for a second and think about what is making the planets move. Not on like a superficial, like, oh well, it's gravity.
I was about to say gravity.
Right. Not on the very basic level, but what's making gravity move itself?
What makes gravity?
Yeah, what pushes gravity to actually
Be gravity.
be gravity?
That is a very deep question I never thought of before. The will of the cosmos?
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
No, there's an eternal and infinite will that makes things move. So that's the firepower on a macroscopic level. That's the element of fire on like a very big, broad spectrum. It's the things that make things move. You could even say that the will, the eternal and the infinite will, is what caused the Big Bang to occur. So in a lot of like Eastern practices, it's said that
it's okay. We just started.
It's all right.
There's someone else coming too.
Gotcha. Well, welcome. Oh, I put a little on. My bad.
We were just talking about what makes gravity gravity.
So
Continue.
There's this thing which is the eternal will that's underlying every little bit of matter that we have. So it's like this eternal and infinite will. It's eternal because it's outside of time and space. Even if we were to go outside of this reality, this universe, there would still be a will that makes things move. So, and it's infinite. You could try to trace it back as far as you can, and you just end up at, well, what caused that? What caused that? What caused that? And so to our minds, it would have no beginning. So that's infinite. It has no beginning and it has no end. And it has to be outside of time and space. At least our universe.
Is that kind of like rebirth too?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
The phoenix that she mentioned last time.
Infinite.
Is it Tiffany? Yes. And you were Amy. What was your girlfriend's name?
Sarah. I told her to show up, but
there's a lady that just pulled up outside. I don't know if she's coming in or not, but
okay, gotcha.
It was not your girlfriend.
Perfect.
She's Sarah.
Yeah, I told her to show up.
And your friend told her to. You asked her to.
Well, she was at a bridal shower, and she's like, "Who's there?" Blah blah blah. I'm just like, "Well, show up, and you'll see who's here." Okay, so that's the firepower on the macroscopic level.
Is that why Reiki is kind of a fire thing? They were teaching the class that I learned. It was like a fire Reiki, and that's kind of infinite with energy, I would think too.
Uh huh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, how's it going, Paula?
Hi.
Welcome.
There's the lady that pulled in behind me. Hello. Can I sit over here?
Anywhere you'd like.
Pretty much here. I'm gonna sit there. Oh, I have this thing about my back. You want to comfortable? Thank you. This will be good. Do you want a pillow or anything? One right there. Good, good.
Perfect.
Fall asleep in the rocking chair. We'll wake you up. Thank you very much. Okay.
All right. I'm sure more people are gonna show up.
You sure?
Yeah.
There's no traffic out there. I think it's the heat. Everybody's like hiding out.
I think so too.
Well, there's that thing downtown. It's like all week or something.
What?
Top of the park?
Yeah.
Oh. Keep thinking top of the morning to you. Well, I know yesterday I tried to go to Myers and I went right as the air show was letting out and it was like crazy trying to get in there. Oh no. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the microscopic level, we looked at water as being emotion. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're looking at the microscopic level and the macroscopic level. So what would be the micro?
To emotion?
What would be, okay, so I kind of lined it up as a table here. So here we have micro, the microcosm. In metaphysics, they call it the microcosm. And then in this line of the table, we have the macrocosm. And here we have the attribute, and I lined it all up, just like an Excel sheet, so you can kind of see it, right? So in the microcosm, this is how we experience these forces personally, right? So fire, we talked about our personal will, like our personal drives, okay? And in the water level, we have emotion, right? Do you remember this? Is it kind of coming back? A little bit?
We didn't specifically go through this last week, but yeah.
Okay. So
I'm really
emotion.
into things in my life right now. That's good.
Emotion. Well, we can talk about these things in your life afterwards. On the macroscopic level, there's like an all-pervading memory of an empathetic and psychic field. So essentially what I'm trying to say here is that water is the cause and effect power. So when I say empathy, we feel something and we can give back to the person, like, oh, I feel your pain. This is what I can do for you. So there's a cause and then an effect thing going on. And that even happens out in the cosmos, right? Like a really big meteor will come through a solar system and it'll throw a planet off of its gravitational pull from the star. So the cause was the meteor and the effect was the planet moving off into space. So that's essentially what emotion is, and emotions are what cause us to have a cause and effect thing inside of our personal lives. Thing is not the right word. Emotions is what causes us to act on specific matters in certain ways. So on a personal level, air represents intellect, how we think. And on a macroscopic level, or in the macrocosm, there is this mind that kind of thinks of all the patterns for our beingness here. So how did all of these little carbon atoms decide to bond with this wall, right? So there's like this pattern that occurs through our cosmos and maybe even beyond our universe that kind of dictates the potential inside of us and everything else. So it's an eternal and infinite mind. It's outside of time and space, and it has no beginning and end. These are all infinite and eternal things. Now, for Earth, I kind of put it synonymous with our personal lives and with the macrocosm. And the reason is because Earth is very solid and dense. It's a very solid and dense force. And one would even say that it's the force that kind of organizes the thinking patterns here, possibility, and it causes it to condense and contract downward. So sometimes this power is considered a concentrating force, a force that kind of pulls everything in. It pulls all of these other invisible things down. And if this is completely over your head right now, that's okay.
Really cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to expose it to you. So last time we met, we kind of talked about more personal things. This time, we're going to talk about personal things and also how these forces or these things that we experience in our personal lives are actually much bigger on a broader scale, because the macrocosm reflects into the microcosm, and the microcosm reflects back into the macrocosm. So there's a dance between the two. Awesome. So these are the elements. Okay. Now there's a fifth element, and it doesn't come out of the Aristotelian school. It's kind of a more modern element that's kind of arisen, I don't know, the past 500 years. And it's the element of spirit. And it's through this spirit, it's the most evasive one out of all of these. And it's said that the spirit is supported by these four elements, but it also kind of directs these things as well. So the spirit kind of influences these other four elements.
Like gravity?
Yeah, sure.
And directs it?
Directs it, exactly. Exactly. So this spirit thing influences the elements to work. All right. So why am I talking about this stuff? Because last week, or the last time we met, we talked about the emperor, which was the number 4. Okay? Which was the number 4, and there's 4 elements. So we talked about the 4 basic elements. This time, we're working with the Hierophant, which is the number 5. So I've added in the 5th element, which is spirit. All right. Now, if you, like I said, if you don't get all this right away, that's okay. I'm giving you everything I've got. Last time I kind of held back.
It's just all interesting.
Yeah, it's very cool. Last time I kind of held back. This time I decided, you know what? We're not holding back this time. We're going to go for it. All right. So let's talk about the Hierophant for a second. And it'll make more sense why I introduced this. Why I introduced this stuff. So the Hierophant, it's number 5. We kind of talked about the Hierophant last time. Remember, we were like, well, who would you rather take orders from, an emperor or a Hierophant? Right? Do you remember that? We did a poll. I took the tallies on the board. Yep. Did the Hierophant win? I think it did too. All right. Right? So the Hierophant won, which is kind of cool.
Which he was related to Christ and religion, right?
Right. So let's look at the Hierophant for a second. What is the Hierophant? What is a Hierophant? Let's just start with the very basic of the basic.
He was the one that was voted in, right? Like he was chosen, not
That was like
the Pope.
The Pope, the priest.
The priest.
Yeah,
Good.
Not born into it, he was chosen. Like the people put him there.
Right. The cardinals vote in the Pope and etc. etc. I feel like now we kind of have work at the times are changing where if you want to become like a priest, you go to the school and everything else. You know.
Are there not repeated numbers in these?
There are.
Oh.
The
yeah. It seems like there are, but then it's like, oh, there's like.
Yep. There's 4 10s. So 1 through 10, there's 4. There's 4 pages, 4 knights, 4 queens, 4 kings. So it's like a deck of cards. And then there's only 1 major arcana for each one. So there's only 1 Hierophant. Okay, so the Hierophant. So Hierophant is the name of a spiritual leader. Okay. You guys see where I'm going with this now? He's a spiritual leader, so it could be a Hindu spiritual leader, it could be a Buddhist spiritual leader, it could be a Christian, etc., etc. It doesn't matter what
Could it
religion.
be angels? Would they be considered hierophants?
Sure.
Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I kind of think of more of like temperance for that one. I kind of think of a hierophant more of like in the flesh. Kind of like a person that's here that can give guidance, more of like a physical person, while I look at temperance more of like a spirit guide, spiritual influence, right? But that's not to say that the Hierophant can't guide you to temperance, can't guide you to your spirit guide. So I want to. Here's this really old tarot
I
card.
was just noticing you put that up there.
Yeah, it's from 1890. Really old.
Wow.
So I want to look at these Hierophants. What are they doing?
So they're sitting on a throne.
Mm-hmm.
They're being, I don't know if admired is the right word, but they're being.
This is interesting too. This is like different from like the modern day one.
Yeah.
Oh, there's not people.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there are people. There's actually 4 people, and we're going to talk to them. I was trying to think of like how do I approach this lesson, and I looked at that card and I figured it out. There's actually 4 people in that. It's hidden though. The tarot, you really have to look at the images. We'll get to it. So, what's the person doing in this card?
So the Hierophant, sitting throne has the right hand is up
Mm-hmm.
in this way.
Mm-hmm.
I think for my tongue, it's like a spiritual sort of gesture in trying to think about religions. And then also holding a wand,
Mm-hmm.
scepter,
yeah.
and that has a crown with a lot of crosses on it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's keys, like they have spiritual keys to heaven, to
Mm-hmm.
next plane.
Yeah, you're observant. So many things.
Yeah.
Good.
So sorry.
No, you're fine.
I like it.
Well, what's he doing? Okay, so he's holding up his hand. He's got the scepter, but what do you think he's also doing? Like, what are the 2 people represent? What do they actually? Let me rephrase the question. I didn't ask the question appropriately.
It's a blessing now?
Yeah, it's like
blessing,
yeah, he's like giving his sermon.
And like you said, it's almost like using an antenna, like pulling in these polar things in his hand and like putting them towards these people.
Yeah.
I don't know if that the word you found.
Yeah, exactly. So he's delivering a message of sorts. That's why I kind of said that like this is more of like a fleshly spiritual guide. Kind of influencing other people to try to find their own higher selves. And sometimes you need a little bit of help. And I have an answer for your angel scenario. Would you know that, let me put it this way, was it easier being told the angels could exist without having to try to figure it out? Like somebody had to have told you that, right?
People always told me I was one. They're like,
okay.
It's like I just am connected with kindness and goodness, and I draw it in, and people try to take it away from me all the time.
Yeah, so somebody told you.
I'm starting to learn to ground myself and guard it. And I've never thought about it before, but now I'm learning so much about this.
Yeah, but somebody told you that, right? You said somebody told you that
like
you were an angel?
Strangers, like old people that I would go and care for. When I was like 5, I would help a lady that had asked to the bathroom.
Uh-huh.
And everybody would always say, "Oh, you're such an angel." They would
Right.
always say those things. It was probably taught to me because my grandpa was a minister. So
right.
The word was just thrown around.
Okay, so somebody taught you. That's what I want to get at. I want to get at somebody taught you.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a Hierophant. That's the move of a Hierophant. So somebody told you that so and so, that this existed, that these are these heavenly realms, and et cetera, et cetera. That's what a Hierophant does. So, like right now, I'm trying to be a Hierophant. Like I'm trying to show you these cool spiritual things, right? Okay. So, he's giving a sermon. Now, to really try to understand what's going on in this card, basically the Hierophant is trying to be a spiritual guide. I put this, I didn't really define it too well. I didn't really like point out. So there's this spirit thing. And the Hierophant tries to guide people through that to get to this spiritual realization. Now, I want to get back to this micro and macrocosm thing. We have our inner lives where we experience emotion and a personal will, and we think and we have our own intellects. But these macroscopic forces, things around us happen, right? There are other things like losing a job or getting admitted to school, like a really cool school, okay? There's other forces, there's these things that happen to us that can change the way that our inner experience occurs. And our inner experience can change the way that these macroscopic things happen as well. So the elements are working in both ways, within us and without us. Now, what does this have to do with the Hierophant? When we're in a time of need, what was one of the more traditional things that people would do? Pray, or they would seek guidance from a spiritual person, or like a spiritual guide, or a minister, or a priest. Now, what that person was actually doing was helping you recalibrate the elemental forces in your life. They're helping you look at your emotions in a new way. They're helping you think about what's going on in a different perspective that recalibrates your inner spiritual self. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
You with us, Tiffany?
I'm writing so hard that I dropped it off.
I'm gonna take a picture of that just so I don't have to keep writing.
That's
I'm
fine.
like texting notes to myself.
They're helping you recalibrate your inner experience with your external experience. That's basically what I was saying. It's like they're helping you recalibrate your inner experience with your external experience, and your external experience with your inner experience.
They're helping to guide you.
They're helping to guide you, right? Right. So they're like a mediator between the two, between the macrocosm and the microcosm. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right. Now we're gonna get a little trippy. Does everybody want to get a little trippy in here?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Pass the bomb first now. Just kidding. Said trippy.
We're gonna get a little out there now. We're gonna get out there. You ready to get a little out there, Tiffany?
Sure.
All right.
Cheese the break for sure.
The Hierophant.
You're just going too fast.
Okay, we can slow down. You can tell me to slow down. This is interesting stuff.
Yeah.
This is really interesting stuff. No, you're fine.
Okay.
All right.
I'm caught up.
You're caught up.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Before we get really trippy,
Yes.
I'll show you how the Hierophant, or spirit, the voice of spirit, is directing the four elements in this card. Because it's not in that one, really. It's not in that one, but it's in this one. Remember how I said there's actually four people, but you have to look for it?
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you. So we have 1, 2, 3, 3, and then look, here's an arm, 4.
Right, yeah.
So the spirit, the Hierophant, is reorganizing, directing the other four elements. Yeah. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. The 5th one's hidden because the other person, you only see their arm. So you have 1,
So
2,
are there 4
3,
in these cards
4.
also?
And then
These are heads?
those are heads, yeah.
Are there
No.
4 in these? Okay.
I mean, I guess you could interpret the keys as people or the dots here with the X's, but it's more apparent in this one.
Yeah, the keys don't feel like people.
No, those little dots kind of do though. This card's older, so that deck is more modern than this one. This one's older.
It makes more sense.
Yeah. All right. Okay, now we're gonna get really weird.
Is the Hierophant also all of the elements?
Yes, it's the spirit.
So he's all of them.
It's like the exalted part of it. It's the exalted part of it. And it lines up too with all of that because the Hierophant is assigned to Taurus. Okay? And if we look back in the Bible and all these different other religions, Taurus is assigned to the bull or the cow.
People are very proud of you, Tauruses.
Yes, we are.
It's funny. They're very proud of it. Yep. I hear that a lot when I'm at some of these little shops like this. It's funny.
Yeah.
I'm a true Taurus too. I had a Taurus bracelet I bought here.
That's hard sometimes. It makes life hard sometimes.
It does. It really does.
Taurus. So the Taurus is actually really special because it's the second astrological sign, so it only comes after Aries. So Aries is first, Taurus is second. So that inherently makes it a very spiritually powerful sign. And if we look at a lot of sacred texts and like old religions, they considered the cow, they would use the cow to represent what they believed God was. So you know where I'm about to go.
Is that like Hindu?
Hinduism, they consider cows sacred, but also in more Western practices, if we look at Judaism and Christianity and more Western religions, there's this story in the Old Testament where Moses went up on the hill and they created a golden calf, and they wanted an idol of what God was, and so if we actually look at the story a little bit closer, it shows that they considered cows or bulls to be a representation of God, right? Why would they choose the cow out of all the creatures, right? It's because they found it to be very close to God. And so Taurus is considered a bull. It's the animal associated to it is a bull. So it's a very spiritual, very close to a higher power astrology sign. Is this making sense? Okay. Okay, cool.
And also, Taurus falls end of April, early May.
Mm-hmm.
And in certain pagan traditions that celebrate Beltane, which is May 1st, which is right smack in the middle of Taurus.
Yep. Very cool. We can also see the Taurus symbol inside of the card. This is one thing that card does not have, is we have, I'll draw it out so we can kind of get a visual of what we're looking for before we look at it. And then we'll get to more of the trivia stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So the Hierophant's like this. His arms are wide open. So we have the horns of the Taurus with the arms, right? And then his body is the circle. His body is the circle. Kind of like the big robe, cloak type of deal. So the symbol is actually hidden inside. And then if we look at the throne, we have it here, these little circles with the horns. So you can see it there too. I'll show you as well. So if we look at the throne, you can see it a little better in this one. You see the circles in the top corners, and then the two, the little shoot-offs. I'll show you too, Paula. So you see the circle up here, and then if there was a little more detail, you could see that there was so the sign of Taurus is in there. It's in there. So we have a lot of different signals of Taurus energy. All right. So we talked about how now we're going to kind of go off into the deep end, and then we're going to talk about how we can relate this to our personal lives, because this stuff is cool to think about, but why does it matter if we can't relate it to our personal lives, right? How can we bring these teachings into a practical way? So we'll get a little bit deeper, and then we'll come back to Earth. All right. So the Hierophant is said to be like a voice. Like a voice, whether it's through a person, through nature, any of these things. It's said to be like the voice of spirit trapped inside of the earth world. So we all have this inner voice. It's this inner chatter. It's this thing that that we can lean on. But not only is it in us, it's actually out there too. And if you listen, I believe you. And if you listen and you see the patterns of this voice, this inner voice, you can let it guide you. So actually the Hierophant not only is a physical person that's alive, it's also in you, it's in me, and it's in nature.
It can be affected by other people. And sometimes you have to ground yourself.
Exactly.
Occasionally, I have like a voice that speaks. I'm not schizophrenic, but a voice that like it's not really words so much as symbols, but it speaks in my head that will tell me not to do something or tell me, okay, go ahead. Just warnings and things like that. I listen to it because I don't know.
Yeah. And what is it trying to do? It's trying to recalibrate your microcosm to how the macrocosm is affecting you and how the macrocosm is affecting your microcosm. So it's like a guide. It's your inner guide, your inner voice. And it doesn't always like speak in words. It's more of like a feeling.
Or symbols. It speaks in symbols.
Speaks in symbols, right?
Sometimes colors, yeah.
Colors.
I call myself Dee, so don't feel strange about that. I don't know why I do that. When I'm home alone, we could do that. And I'm talking about myself. So
Yeah, it's a guide.
but I know what it is.
Well, I know I've been around people sometimes, and the voice will say to me, "This person's no good." So I just think, okay.
Yeah,
Wow, I wish I had that.
I had that in my life a
I
lot
tend to try to
where
help them.
I know, like, I just know someone is bad news,
No, you can't.
but everyone else around me thinks they walk on water and they're amazing. And I'm sitting there like, no, there's something obviously wrong with them, and no one else can see it or feel it or hear it. And then later on down the line, it comes out that they're sketchy. Like my teacher in high school, she goes sleep with
It's
him.
your energy trainer.
I knew from day one he was bad news and to stay away from him. And every time he wanted to like talk to me, I was like, no.
Train your energy.
And later on, he's this hero.
Your energy.
Everyone loves him. He's so great. I just found out because he gave me a bad grade, blah, blah. And then later on,
It's so funny.
he got, busted for having a student in his house.
That's scary.
He's got people at work, stuff like that.
Tourmaline.
Yep.
Yeah, so I get that.
What
Okay.
is it? Tourmaline?
All right.
Tourmaline. T-O-U-R.
What does it do? What does it spell?
It protects those evil.
Oh, I didn't learn.
Okay. Let's recollect.
Oh, it's so funny. Just learned about this the
All
other
I
day.
got is this.
Good. So it means you're listening to your inner Hierophant.
Yeah, no, I get the hell out of there or something. Somebody tell
Good.
me. If I know that I find out somebody's not no good, I don't stick around to find out why.
Mm-hmm. Just remember, that this inner voice is trying to keep it so that your inner element, your inner elemental pattern, and the outer elemental pattern that you're experiencing stays calibrated, right? We want to keep an equilibrium, right? We want to keep an equilibrium. We want to stay calm, right? We want to think clearly.
Gotta listen to it.
And it's
You gotta
trying,
stay in tune and listen to it.
yep, it's trying to keep your inner elemental pattern in a homogeneous mixture, in a good way, right? Sometimes we're going to have more water, we're going to have more emotion, right? We're going to have more insane cause and effects that happen in our life. And so we need to listen to our inner voice, our inner Hierophant, so that we can recalibrate and bring the other elemental patterns into a level space. Does that make sense? Okay, practical teaching. Now let's get to the practical teaching. I want every one of us to think of something, whether it's your personal will, your emotion, your intellect, or organization. So this goes over here. What is something that we're proud of on this list? And what is something that we can work on? And what can the Hierophant, our inner voice, what is it telling you to do to work on that thing? If you don't want to share, you don't have to. But since this was something I chose to do, I'll start. Okay? Is that fair?
Always.
Okay. I'll start.
Everything's good in this class. Nothing's evil. It's all good.
I'll start. So I can work on my organization a little bit more. I can work on being organized a little bit more. And that means that level is low. My organization is it's not calibrated as much as my will and my intellect are. Those things, I have the drive and I have the thinking power, but I can't direct my drive and I can't direct my thinking if things aren't organized. How am I going to choose where to put the energy, my will, and my thinking in the right spot at the right time if everything's just thrown around? Right? I'm thinking about my office right now. I'm thinking about my room and my apartment that I share with Sarah.
She didn't gonna let you be that way.
No, you know what she does? She closes the door. She closes the door. She doesn't even want to see it.
There's no reason to get upset about things like that because you can shut it door. Yeah.
Right.
It's funny.
She just shuts the door. And it was on my list of things to do today, but I wasn't able to get to it. I need to organize better. Also with my time. So I'm being very vulnerable, very transparent. I want us to take 1 minute and think about something in our lives that we can work on, and we need to allow our inner Hierophant or outer Hierophant, if there's a sign out there that you've been kind of ignoring, but you know it's there.
I can tell you right now.
Okay.
Because you made me think of this. I had a great procrastinator. So I have a bunch of little projects. They're all like took out of the box, and they're all sitting here and sitting here and sitting here, like little bird feeders and a chair I want to put together and all this stuff all over my house, just sitting there. But if I put them together and work, use them, I'd be like so happy. But the other thing is, this is something that a friend of mine that's a psychologist told me. I was in church, we had this big blow up, and like one part of the church against the other part of the church, and they were fighting, and there was like yelling and screaming. And I just like stood there and I said, "You've got to stop and listen to yourselves." And I was very calm, and I was kind of a leader in the church because I was going through the ministry, and they kind of listened to me. And I said, "You got to stop. You got to." So rather than jumping in and screaming and yelling back at him and stuff, I kind of calmed him down. And later I told the psychologist, and she said that when you're in the midst of chaos and you're able to remain calm, she said, however you act in the middle of chaos is your true self. Whoever you are, that's your true nature. And you don't see it until you're in a situation like that.
I like that. Excellent.
So it's your hierophant, or it's basically what's in you.
Yep.
It's your you.
Your inner voice.
Yeah.
It's your inner voice. And that inner, like I was trying to say, that inner voice can also come from an external source. So, like, if nature or somebody in your family keeps telling you something, and you're just like, I'm not listening to that, but it's something you should listen to, right? So when you said there's these little tasks that you have to do, maybe personal will. Maybe you gotta just get up and do it.
I do. I know I do.
So that what element would that equate to?
Fire.
Fire, your drive.
I gotta
Good.
turn off the TV and turn my phone off.
Good. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes absolute sense.
All right. All right, we're all on the same page. I'm so happy. Okay, good. Okay. You want to share? Okay.
Sure. Of those on the list, the first thing that came to my mind was emotion. I have a tendency to always put myself second. So what I want, how I feel, what would make me better, never is first. Like even with my wedding. I was so afraid of being a bridezilla that my wedding was a disaster because nothing went right because no one was doing what they said they were going to do.
That's terrible.
My wedding planner ran off with like our money for tips, so like our service staff left, and it was just like my bridesmaids got really drunk because they were treating it as like a party, and there's so many like I wanted these bridesmaids dresses, like no, we don't like those dresses, and so it took forever to figure out bridesmaids dresses. It was like everything went wrong because I was so afraid of being like this is what I want. And even now with like my husband, he's like, well, what do you want for dinner? I always like, whatever you want, because you're the one that has the dietary restrictions, and you're the one that like has food things where it's not even a taste thing or a preference, it's just like texture thing, like because and it's like I love sushi. How often do we go get sushi? Never, because fish is slimy. I don't like. So it's like, what do I need to work on expressing and verbalizing and saying, no, I am tired. I don't want to do this thing. I want to do this. I want to do that. And that's what I think. How that would be water. What is the Hierophant telling us to do about that? I don't know. Other than like speak up, maybe. I don't know to like. I don't know. Because that's been a thing I've been doing my whole life. I'm sure it's a trauma response to something that happened somewhere along the line. But I just
Start small.
start to like even coming to this class. I called him and said, "Hey, um, I'm going to this class. I know you're in the hospital. What do you want me to bring you for dinner? Because you hate hospital food." And he's like, "Oh, you're going to the class, but I'm hungry now." I was like, "Well, you could always call the hospital food and get a snack, and I'll bring you your actual dinner later." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I guess I can do that. You were gone all day." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I was cleaning the house. I was resting. No one's waiting on me hand and foot."
Yeah.
That's true.
So,
Yeah.
You're doing those things today.
so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this because I was like, I could just not go because the way to the hospital and way to here is like one's going straight, one's turning right, and I'm like, lights red, lights green, I'm turning, and I was like, yeah. So that was like, and I was like, oh, okay, and I know he's hard. I know it's hard for him to be in the hospital. He's been in there since May 1st.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
kidney transplant.
there were some complications, and the kidney's fine. The kidney's great, but when they were in him, they did not wash their hands or sterilize equipment. Something got in there, and necrotizing bacteria.
Ooh.
Yeah, not to gross people out, but he has.
But the kidney's okay.
The kidney's okay. It did not get past the abdominal wall, but anything he has no stomach tissue or hurts or fat or skin or anything. It's all gone. They had to take it all out. So I know it's not easy for him. And he misses the house, he misses the animals. I mean, I even lied and said my dog was a service animal so he could see the dog for a minute.
You stretch the truth.
I stretch the truth.
You don't seem like a liar to me.
I try not to lie. You know, and we do have plans of training him. It's just very expensive. So he's a service dog in training to be trained.
You could go online and for $20 get a little vest.
I know. I
that
just
says
feel.
that.
I know. I just feel.
And even make him an emotional therapy. I think that might be cheaper for you.
That
to
doesn't
your budget.
Anyway, yeah.
Oh.
So it
I
just
got
was like
mine.
so like that's it. I was like,
That's
long story short, I finally said like actually I want to do this thing for myself,
I love that.
and that was the first time I've done that in forever. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe just keep coming here every other week.
Yeah, it's not that big of a commitment. It's only once every 2
I was
weeks.
really happy to see that you were here when I came in.
Yeah.
I really was. It was just like, oh.
Sarah wanted to be here. She had a braids bridesmaid.
Yeah, she's learned a lot of this, and she's at home with you, and she knows already more than us, and it was.
She don't know, should she locks that door.
She'll be back, and we'll see her.
Yeah, you'll see her next time.
She needs to go have fun in the hot air outside right now. She's in the air.
Yeah. Okay, so emotion.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add something on that. I actually have a tendency to do that as well. I'm kind of like a people pleaser as well.
Yeah.
Even when I don't want to do
Well,
something.
you stole organization and you took procrastination, so I had to go with something.
No, I mean that makes sense.
Like, no.
You could have.
Yeah, no, that was the thing that came to me.
What we didn't do though, well, I kind of did. I said my will and my intellect are strong, but my organizations.
You need to.
That's good.
I
What?
got a
My
course.
intellect, I feel like,
Good.
is strong.
Okay, good.
I took a course on being more assertive, and that was very helpful. It's just in the way that you address people. Like if they say something you don't like, it just, it tells you how to address them in a way that they don't do it again, but without being mean.
Where did you find that class?
When I was working, I took one of those like classes where you go for the day. I asked them if I could go, and then you just go for the day to some hotel.
Yeah, there's a lady in Ann
So
Arbor
you
who
looked
has
online or
workshops
something.